First of all, I need to clarify that critical discussion is just not about rejecting or finding a mistake with the author's argument or position. Rather, it is an intellectual reflection on one's own and others' ideas for the sake of getting a clearer understanding of an issue. A clear understanding of the text is necessary for further critical engagement with the author's ideas. The key text Introduction to Representation written by Stuart Hall has been chosen for critical engagement because it is considered to be thoroughly read. This task is addressed by firstly demonstrating a clear description of what the author expresses, and secondly the analysis and the interpretation of the author's ideas are provided. In addition, evaluation of the author's claims, arguments, and approach will be given in this presentation. Lastly, this presentation will display the possible implication given by the author. The topic of the text is Introduction of Representation. The author Hall focuses on dealing with the questions of representation in different ways under the guide of the circuit of culture. The main claim of the author is that representation is one of the central practices in the circuit of culture, which entails the representation, identity, production, consumption, and regulation. The main limit of the text is the lack of subtitles given to guide the readers to read. Although this text guides the reader by asking questions, it is still not as easy as it would be if the subtitles could be provided in this text. Only in this way could the readers have a better understanding of the interaction among the culture, language, meaning, production, and representation more easily. Several interpretations are offered by the authors to the main concepts, including language, culture, popular culture, and cultural codes or linguistic codes. These interpretations given by the author are supported by several references of other authors, including Dugay, James, Negus, Thompsons, and Woodward. Also, in order to support these concepts, author uses numerous examples. For example, in order to explain the cultural codes, author uses sufficient instances to help reader to understand it. For example, the members of the same culture must share a set of concepts, images, and ideas which enable them to think and feel about the world and thus to interpret the world in roughly similar ways. Most of the meanings of the key concepts are clearly stated, such as language, culture, pop culture, meaning, cultural codes. However, a couple of the key concepts are not defined clearly, such as the representation and the circuit of culture. The possible reason may be these words are too broad to be defined. In this text, culture is said to embody the best that has been thought and said in a society, it is the sum of the great ideas. However, there could be possible counter-examples against this statement. Superstition could be one of the counter-examples. Being superstitious at a high level could lead to unnecessary stress and anxiety. In the very beginning of the text, author asks, what does representation have to do with culture? What is the connection between them? The simple answer given by the author is that culture is about shared meaning, which is probably not a sufficient answer. A direct answer is probably desired by the readers. From my point of view, authors should provide clear interpretation with an example. This question may be answered in this way. Representation and culture are inseparable. For instance, objects and people do not have a constant meaning, but their meanings are shaped by humans in the context of their culture. As they are have the ability to make things mean something. Representation is simply the process in which such meanings are constructed. There is possible implication given in this text which should be pointed out. As explained by the author, in order to communicate meanings to other people, the participants to any meaningful exchange must also be able to use the same linguistic codes. This implication can be used in a second language acquisition setting, in which even though a person can acquire perfect language skills in his second language, it is still unlikely for him to acquire the linguistic code or cultural code. For instance, he may be unable to understand a native speaker due to the cultural differences. In conclusion, although this text has provided readers a number of the interpretations of certain concepts, such as language, culture, and cultural codes, which are essential to explain the circuit of culture, it can be argued that there are still numerous limits or flaws in this text. Firstly, there is a lack of subtitles which can help readers to understand this text more easily. Secondly, a couple of concepts are not clearly defined, such as the representation and circuit of culture. Thirdly, a counterexample can be given to oppose the definition given by the author, such as the definition of culture. Finally, a direct answer is needed to give the readers a good understanding of certain concepts, such as the connection between culture and representation.